They give us these counseling advices and which actually boosts up our energy and we can do better. This is helping us.
In addition to the timetable subjects, we have a lot of co-curricular activities like swimming, gymnastics, dance, art, carpentry, yoga.
We are allowed to showcase all of our talents, and also we are allowed to draw portraits on wall.
There are two classes for music in my school. Better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. Dolly ma'am is the principal of our school. She is very kind. She lets us be naughty. She doesn't scold us. Dr. Savita, or Savita ma'am as we call her, is the director of our school. She, just like Dolly ma'am, is also very kind with us.
I like to read a lot of books. In this school, I've found a lot of other kids who like to read books too.
We have the library, we have the honest shop.
So this dance group is basically and exclusively only for 12th standard students. Normally people don't really give chances to 12th graders just because they have a lot to study and they have their board exams coming up. In spite of all of that, our teachers have strived so hard to give us a stress-free environment.
I never volunteered for school activities and I was very scared to talk in front of people. I didn't know my potential, but coming to Pupil, they've made me realize my capacity and I'm very proud to be a pupilite.
We get to perform in different colleges, different festivals, different culturals, which is amazing as well. I really think that schools like these actually strive to go way ahead in the future. There are kids who can shine from the school. Probably their interest in singing or dancing can evolve from the school, evolve from these small participations that they do. We need to have more schools like these so that we can have better kids in the future. The Pupil is such a happy place to be in and it's our second home.
I'm really proud to be the pupilite.
This was
that was very nice. That was very nice. Yeah.
thank you, sir. Over to you, Pranav.
Thank you, ma'am.
Pranay, sorry.
A very good morning to everyone present here. I would like to call upon Sarah to deliver the welcome address.
Good morning, everyone. I am Sarah Cherian from class 11. Education's purpose is to transform empty minds to open ones. I would like to welcome our chief guest, Mr. Karthikeyan Shankaran, the CFO of Exafluence. Nice to have you here, sir. A warm welcome to our respected Chancellor, Dr. N.M. Veeran, our directors, Dr. Savita and Dr. Rajesh, and all our beloved principals, teachers, students, and parents. To this 15th episode of the Career Talk series. The Pupil Savita Eco School creates a positive and creative atmosphere for all the students with the vision to transform them into balanced and matured individuals. It helps channel their talents and find their vision for life. The Pupil Career Talk series is a new initiative taken by Dr. Savita to expose students to various streams of study and different career opportunities. I'd like to welcome you all to this session. Over to Pranay to introduce us to the chief guest.
Thank you, Sarah. Without big data analytics, companies are blind and deaf, wandering out onto the web like a deer on the freeway. This quote gives us a brief idea of the importance of data and business analytics in the modern age. My name is Pranay Keprit of grade 11, and I would like to give a brief introduction of our chief guest today, Mr. Karthikeyan Shankaran. Sir's professional career has been focused on using information technology as a tool to solve business problems. He has been fortunate enough to attend some of the best academic programs in India, the management course at IIM Calcutta, computer science degree and the BTech program at IIT Madras. Sir started his IT career in 1996, implementing enterprise resource planning systems and shifted to business intelligence in the year 2000 after completing his MBA. Over the last 20 years, he has worked in the area of business intelligence and advanced analytics, having played multiple roles as a consultant, professional project manager, Business Development Manager, Innovation Lead, and Delivery Head. Currently at Exafluence as a Chief Product Officer, Sir is responsible for nurturing and developing a range of EXF platforms and solutions geared to help companies navigate their digital transformation journey in the most optimal manner. I now request you, sir, to enlighten all of us on the career of data and business analytics.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I mean, I feel so young today. Thank you very much for inviting me for this session. Let me share my screen. I think the sharing thing is disabled.
I'll make you the presenter, sir. Just 1 second.
Cool. Yeah. Again, great to be here. Thank you so much for joining me for this session. I put together a bunch of information slides, right, which I will kind of walk through. But more importantly, I really want to answer the questions that you might have, because again, analytics means different things for different people, and people might talk about analytics to kind of scare you also sometimes, right? So my intention is to simplify it to the extent that it can be a great way to learn some of these things, right? We can get started right away, right? And basically to develop a kind of a passion for this space, because this is just a fascinating space. I really love it. I only wish I was probably your age, right? So that there is just tremendous opportunities going into the future, which all of you can kind of work on and really solve complex problems in society, right? So that's what I will try and do, but the sharing is still not enabled, ma'am. Yeah, now it's enabled. Yeah, now it's enabled. Yes.
Okay, sir. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you. So is my slide visible?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So I'll spend some time, right, going through some of these slides, right? Again, my intention is to just keep it at a high level so that you get a feel for what this space is, and then whatever questions you have, whatever, we can get into some depth if required. Okay. So with that, I'll get started. Again, thank you so much for joining me, and hope it is really worth your time, right? So what we will try and do today, right, in next 45 minutes to an hour, is to just go through this, right, which is what is analytics at a high level, right? Get an understanding of it. Why is it important for all of you to know about it? All of you are at such a stage that you can really make a huge impact for yourself, for the organization that you would go to work for the society, for the country, right? There's so many possibilities with analytics. Of course, career options, right? We'll just quickly discuss on how analytics is being used across different industries. And most importantly, analytics is really great fun, right? I know the young generation. I have a son who's 17 years old. My daughter is 12 now. So I kind of, in some sense, a little bit understand how people think, right? What interest people at that stage and things like that. So, and it can be, and fun is a very, very important aspect, right, of anything that people that age do, right? So we will talk about that, and I will also give you a little bit of flavor in terms of what should you do, what should you learn, right? Or what is that orientation that you need to have in order to start thinking about analytics. And as I said, you can start right away. Okay, so that's what we will do as part of this session. Let me move on. So first, what is analytics, right? So at a very, very simple level, right? You can divide broadly into two categories, right? One, there are things that we know, right? And there are things that we don't know. Okay, so if we can start with that kind of a categorization, let's start thinking about some examples, right? Many of you will know that Messi is an Argentinian football legend who has scored 748 goals in 929 appearances, right? And many of you would have been fans of Messi, etc. But what we don't know, right? Though you might be a big fan of Messi, you will not know what is the chance that Messi will score a goal in his next game, right? You don't know that, right? So that falls into the category of information that you don't know, even though you have a lot of historical information about what Messi has done, what games has he played, etc., etc. Right? let's move forward with a few more examples, right? Superstar Rajinikanth movie Annate, right? Releasing for Diwali this year, right? I think most of us will know that because we would have been following all the reports and things like that. What you will not know, or nobody knows right now, is what will be the box office collections for the movie once it is released, right? Sitting now, when it's getting released in November timeframe, what will be the box office collection? What will be the revenues for the movie? We don't know, right? Purvika Mobiles has sold whatever X units of Apple phones till June 2021, sitting in probably early July. We will say, okay, till June 2021, these are the number of phones that they have sold, right? What we don't know is how many Apple phones will they sell till end of the year. We don't know that, right? Location of crime hotspots in a city. People might know that because a lot of historical data, people would have mapped out all the spots and said, okay, what are the crime hotspots? What we will not know is in which part of the city is the next crime going to occur, right? An important question, but we really don't know the answer to that question, right? My last one, there are 30,000 genes in the human genome, right? What we don't know, how will these genes behave in the future, which could lead to certain diseases in the human body? We don't know that information, right? So I can go on and on with such examples. There are things that we know, there are things that we don't know, correct? And the magic of analytics in some sense is it tries to answer the questions that we don't know, right? Which is basically about using all the information and the data that we have, right? And trying to find answers to questions that could happen in the future, right? If you take every single example here, of course, there are fun examples here. There are some critical business related examples, but across the space of business, society, uh, uh, fun things, right, etc. It is all about converting information that you know, which is typically called as data, right, into information that you don't know is what analytics is all about at the high level, right? Of course, once you get into the details, there are lots of implications on how do you do analytics, what are the components of it, etc., etc. We'll talk about that a little bit, but this is the key takeaway of this slide, right? So again, if you have a reader of Sherlock Holmes or Hercule Poirot and people like that, right? Investigators. This is basically what they do in some sense, right? Okay, they have some information, they have some data, they try and figure out things on why certain things happen, what can happen in the future, things like that, right? So with that, those are some of the motivating examples for us to think about analytics. Right? So what is analytics again? Take information that you have, right? Analytics is all about taking information that you have, which is data, and creating information that you don't have, which are the predictions, right? And of course, these predictions should be useful for you to solve some of those business problems, right? Predicting the behavior of genes in the human body is very useful because if you can predict certain diseases, you can control it, right? You can take action in order to avoid them, right? If you know how many mobile phones you're going to sell till end of the year, you can order the right quantity, you can manage your supply chain better. There are business implications for it, right? If you know at what probability that Lionel Messi will score a goal in next game, you could probably bet on it, right? There are, of course, I'm not saying betting is good, but all I'm saying is there is potential to kind of get benefits from answering, right, such questions, right? Think about box office collections, right? If you know what the box office collections would be in the future, then you can organize that whole thing around, okay, how much money, in how many screens am I going to release release the movie, etc., etc., right? Now, analytics accomplishes this task or this magic or this conversion by using data, because data is the raw material for analytics. It uses math, and that is the unique thing or unique power that comes to analytics because we are going to use mathematical algorithms, right? Again, you need not be afraid of it because it's very easy to learn these types of algorithms, right? But yes, there is a math aspect and a statistical aspect to it. And at the end of the day, you use computer technology because that is when you can run many of these algorithms at a large scale, right? Because data is huge, right? So what analytics does this, and the way it does it is by using data as the raw material, mathematical algorithms as the engine, and computer technology as the infrastructure around which all these things kind of come together, right? So that's what analytics is all about. hopefully that's kind of clear. If you have any questions, feel free to ask right now before I move to the next one.
Children, the platform is open. So if you want to ask any questions in between, please feel free to do so, or you can also ask in the chat box.
I'm just looking at this.
I think they are very clear now, so maybe.
Cool. Okay, let me move on. Okay, so why is it important for you to know about it, right? Yes, the magic is all fine. Converting information that you have or data that you have into information that you don't have is what analytics is all about. It uses algorithms, it uses data. We saw all that. Why is it important for you to know about it? There are a bunch of reasons. The first most important thing is because my slide is not moving. Okay. Because it is all around you, whether you like it or not, whether you are the person creating analytical solutions, you are anyway bombarded by a whole lot of analytics applications, right? So I'll give you a few examples. So you want to watch a movie at the theater, right? Think of a scenario where you really want to watch a movie at the theater. Of course, this COVID has kind of created a havoc in terms of all that, all those activities. But okay, now if you're planning to watch a movie at the theater, what do? You open an app, right? Most of us book online right now. Okay, you open an app to book a movie ticket. Then you go and watch a movie at the theater, right? Again, I'm sure there are a lot of Avengers fans out there, right? Then this is an experience by itself, right? You actually go, I mean, typically you spend more on snacks during the break than the movie tickets themselves in most cases, right? So you have snacks during the break. And many of us also come back after watching a movie and write, right? Good reviews, bad reviews. In fact, there are a lot more bad reviews that we write typically if you don't find the movie good because you would have paid whatever $500 for a movie and you say, you know what, this movie is not good. So let me write about it somewhere, right? So you go and write a movie review about the movie, right? So this is a typical thing that will happen when you want to watch a movie at the theater, right? The whole life cycle. Now, if you look at it, at each and every stage, analytics is at work, right? So there are algorithms out there that provides you the recommendations. It is based on what you have watched in the past, what your friends have watched, right? It brings in a whole lot of information and data and gives you, okay, I think Karthik would like these 5 movies, right? It kind of provides it as a recommendation on the app itself, right? I spoke about predicting box office sales. This is an activity that is done almost by all studios right now, at least in the US, and slowly it's also becoming more prevalent in India also, where you kind of collect a whole lot of information, the buzz around the trailers, right? You look at, all the Wikipedia edits, right? Tweets, etc., to really figure out what could be the star value, etc., and then see what could be the box office collections. First week, second week, right? You do it much before a movie is released, right? The snacks consumption would vary, right? By the weekend there'll be a lot more consumption, weekdays less consumption, mornings to nights, right? Depending on festival season. So the volume of snacks consumed will also vary. So it's important for the person who's kind of having that in the theater, the shop at the theater, in order to figure out how much of each of these snacks should I have, right? So that I don't lose revenue. If somebody asks for a samosa and I don't have it, I lose revenue there, right? So it's important that I understand what the demand could be so that I can kind of have these products accordingly. It is analytics, right? You're forecasting the demand for the product. Then based on user reviews, which is all text data, people have written, it's all sentences and words. You can actually extract a lot of meaning from that using analytics, right? What is the sentiment expressed? What people like about the movie, what they don't like about the movie, how they compare this movie to some of the movies that have come in the past, right? All that information, insights can be extracted from the user reviews, right? So if you really look at each of these stages, very simple set of steps, but there is analytics at work behind the scenes. You might know it, might not know it, but that's the reality. There is analytics at work at every single stage of a process right now, right? And of course, if you own a self-driving car in order to drive from your home to the theater, okay, that's the most sophisticated example of analytics or AI at work right now, which is basically a car that self-drives, right? That is also analytics, okay? Now, just a quick another example of you're playing a game at home. I'm sure a lot of people do that. Again, when you open an app or something, you get recommendations about a game. you need to find opponents of matching skill, right? That's what the game is all about, right? It shouldn't be, I mean, your opponent should not be so easy for you to defeat that you'll find it boring. At the same time, if it's too strong, again, you might find it boring, right? So it has to be of matching strength, right? Then if you're playing the Xbox, there are gestures that you do, right? And it has to be identified for the whole response to come in properly. And the company, Microsoft in this case, is constantly trying to figure out what new products should I kind of build, right? What will interest people, etc., right? So again, a typical kind of a life cycle, analytics at work at each and every stage. Recommendations, of course, I spoke about it earlier. This is, again, there are a bunch of algorithms that are there in order to find all these matching skills. In the Microsoft case, they use something called true skill, right? The whole aspect of finding the gestures and identifying what the gestures mean is what is video analytics all about. We can analyze videos to understand what is happening in those videos, right? What are people doing there? What emotions are they expressing in the video, right? What are they thinking in some sense, right? Even in advanced cases. Now, there are privacy issues and all those ethical, moral issues, which is, of course, very, very important. But just for you to understand at a high level that, yes, this is possible using analytics, right? And of course, in order to find out what games I need to bring in, I need to identify the trends in the marketplace, right? What has happened over a period of time in order to develop new games, what people will like. And imagine these are, I mean, Microsoft is a global company, right? They develop games across the world. So they need to figure out what interests a person in India as compared to what kind of an interest will a person in Brazil have, right? What will a person in the US or Germany will have? So all these things will vary. Each one of us is different, especially in a region. We have certain ways of looking at it. We have our own, the culture matters and our way of thinking matters, etc. And that's very important for Microsoft to understand in order to develop games precisely the right way for that particular market, right? So again, all I'm trying to say with these two slides is analytics is at work in almost everything around you. So even if you're not the person trying to create analytics, it's important to understand what the implications are, right? So again, just to give a few more examples, analytics is everywhere now. You take a Swiggy, right? You order food, it gives you again recommendations, right? You can provide feedback. It also figures out what all has this person done before. It optimizes the route of a person who has to supposed to get you, I mean, deliver the food to your home, right? All that is analytics, right? You take a Google search, you type in a query, it fetches you the right results. Analytics is at work again. Amazon purchases, recommendation engines on your mobile phone or your web interface, analytics at work. Flight bookings, it gives you the price, it compares the price, etc., etc. College admissions, now a lot of these college admissions, at least in the US, as far as I know, happens through all these algorithms, right? So a lot of applicants, they actually get scored by an algorithm, and then it actually says, okay, should this person be admitted or not, right? So there are many such examples of analytics at work. It's kind of all around you. So it has great power in terms of doing certain things, but it's also important for all of us to understand, mainly folks in this call, because you will develop it, right? In the future, you will develop such things. You will kind of see what can be done with it, how to solve various problems. But it's important to keep in mind there are moral, ethical dimensions, right? It's very important to understand that, okay, getting individual data and targeting that person with or manipulating their thoughts or things like it's a wrong thing to do morally. All of us know that, but an algorithm will not know it, right? So if you develop algorithms that way, potentially you could end up in a situation where you're trying to manipulate people. And again, some of you might have watched all this. There are Netflix series, right? The Social Dilemma, the Great Hack kind of series, which talks about how I mean, in that case, Cambridge Analytica actually took all the information from people and actually manipulated, right? By having the ads and all that positioned specifically for people in order to manipulate their thinking, right? Or influence their thinking, not manipulate. Influence is a better word. Yeah, morally probably not the right thing to do. Okay, so that's the power of analytics. It's all around you, and nobody can deny the fact that again, you will get a lot of information around how much data is generated every day and things like that. I'm not going to explain this slide, but then bottom line is there is just so much data that is getting generated. Again, in fact, thanks to your generation, right? In some sense, because there's so many people tweeting and Instagramming, as they say, whatever, sending emails, WhatsApp messages, everything adds to a digital footprint, right? And think of business data. There are so many transactions that's going on. We transact with our mobiles, right? We do online banking. All that data is getting captured somewhere. Somebody has to make sense of that data. Or put it the other way, if you can make sense of data in the responsible, ethical manner, then you could actually solve a whole variety of problems. And that's being done right now. And yes, we are only scratching the surface of what is possible. Right? So this is the whole uh, uh, data revolution, or what they call as a digital revolution. Things are becoming digital. It was already big with the advent of COVID. Again, all your classes are online. That is all digital data, right? So everything is now becoming more and more digital, to the extent that each one of that event is generating tons of data, right? So what are you going to do with it? And there are enough problems to solve. So look at it both ways, right? You have enough problems to solve. There is a lot of data getting generated. So if somebody can really match that properly, then they're going to have a fantastic, fulfilling career, right? So that's what I wanted to convey with this section. Okay, I'll just move on and take your questions towards the end. Hopefully that's clear. It's basically all around you is the message. What about career options in analytics? Yes, we can solve a lot of problems, but is the industry using it? Yes. And as I said, we are only scratching the surface right now. I've been working in this space, at least in this analytics space, for around 20, 22 years right now. And I still, every day when I look at or when I talk to people, I find new areas of focus, new problems to solve, right? Which makes it very, very exciting, right? Again, don't worry about the details on this slide, but the bottom line is to say that almost in every single area of the business, analytics is getting used in one way or the other. So it could be a generic thing, like a recommendation engine, for example, is probably used across multiple industries, whereas there are also very, very specific things specific to an industry, right? So the transport industry will focus on logistics. So they will have to optimize the logistics, uh, the movement of goods and trucks and things like that, right? If you look at agriculture, again in India, that's big, and there are a lot of companies trying to figure out, okay, what can we do to improve the agricultural yield, right? And how do we ensure that farmers are not exploited in some sense, right? Because of the high cost of fertilizers and things like that. And how do you detect diseases in plants in different parts of India itself, and of course in different parts of the world? Hospitality industry, entertainment industry, sports, aerospace. If you're watching the Olympics, right, there's so much of statistics that come out, right, in every single sport, and that is all to do with actually analyzing that information to come up with relevant insights, right? Banking, personal finance, healthcare, right, pharma, education, entertainment. So all these different areas, you can actually see analytics at work. And so what happens? And each of these industries will actually do more and more. And by the time you guys finish your studies, get into college, study things, right? All this will be, all these areas will be ripe for innovation. There are just so many things possible in this space. Okay. Okay, so I want to show a few things. Of course, we spoke about what is analytics and career options, etc., etc. I can answer a few questions that you might have, but analytics is also great fun. I just wanted to show, I can show there are lots of examples where analytics is used in a very fun way, as I said, in sports and areas like that. But I just wanted to quickly show you a couple of things, which you can relate to in some sense. So this is a company called Grammarly, which does a lot of data visualization and things like that. And so this whole concept was basically analyzing Dhoni's sixes, right? Dhoni is one of the legends, especially in ODIs. He's the fourth in the list of most sixes in ODI career. So if you want to analyze all the sixes that Dhoni has scored, right, you can actually analyze with very interesting visualizations. And what this visualization tells you is, okay, and what in a 50 over match, what overs has Dhoni scored the most number of sixers, right? Very interesting information, right? If you really look at it, see the number of sixers that he has scored in the last 5 overs of a one-day match, right? As compared to the initial Dhoni, as if many of you would have seen Dhoni in action, right? So how he accumulates first, how he kind of settles down, right? He's fairly tentative at the start, but once he settles in, this is what he can do, right? And the look at Dhoni territory, the number of sixers that he has hit in different parts. Look at the number of things he has done. I mean, he has hit in the mid wicket region, the long on region or so, right? Very interesting because that is his strength. Now, if you're in the opposite side to Dhoni, what will you do? You look at all this and say, okay, I know what Dhoni's strengths are. I will try and figure out a strategy in order to ensure that he does not score too many sixers in that particular match, right? So that's basically how analytics is being used. Sports analytics is really huge. In India, it's also becoming because there are so many leagues that are coming up, it's becoming big. But in the US and many other parts of the world, sports analytics is a separate branch by itself, right? Especially baseball and football and things like that. Okay, just one last visualization in terms of against the opposition, right? How many sixes has he scored against different opposition? 42 against Sri Lanka. They have borne the brunt of his onslaught. 33 against England, 27 against Australia, right? And also very nicely color coded to say, okay, while is it during a chase or is it while batting first? Okay, so look at all the information. Dhoni's career was probably around what, 15 years or so, right? All that compressed into nice, interesting visualizations using which you can start thinking about, okay, what if you're on the opposite team, as I said, develop a strategy. If you're a Dhoni fan, you get a lot of interesting information around this, and you can use it in whichever way, right? So this is fun. And even something like budget, right, which is typically very difficult for anybody to understand, can be nicely visualized, right? Talking about, okay, in 2004 budget, after the budget day, what happened, right? What are the sectors that got impacted the most? Red indicates that the sector lost value, right, in terms of the stock market and all that, and some of the sectors gained. So 2004, if you look at it, was a fairly difficult budget because most of the sectors lost money, right? Whereas if you look at, let's say 2011, look at this, right? Or even 2012, 2013, 2014. Yeah, 2014 is nice, right? So most of it gained. Some of the sectors gained a lot more, right? So you can actually see this, right? So there are banking and financial services, metals and mining really gained in this budget of 2010, right? As 2010 was, of course, I think Manmohan Singh was the finance minister, I guess, or Chidambaram, I forgot. But even things like a very complicated thing like a budget can be visualized in very easy ways for people to understand, right? And I'm sure all of you appreciate the fact that there is just so much of complexity and so much of data out there that if you can simplify it and make it interesting for people, that's where you will get their attention. And analytics is a great way to do that, right? So this is one example. I'll show you one more. Probably a couple of more. So look at this is just a restaurant. I think this was Sarana Bhavan, if I remember right. Basically an analysis in terms of what gets consumed the most, what is the change in a particular day compared to the previous day, right? It's very interesting, and we can relate to this, right? Everybody relates to food. So you can actually see, okay, meal has been the highest in terms of value, but it actually dropped, whereas South Indian thali on that particular day, day 30, right, grew the most, right? The growth percentage was the highest probably, right? And some of the other things lost out. Bhaji, there is just so much of new, whatever the percentage increase in Bhaji was much higher on that particular day as compared to the previous day, right? What is the quantity consumed? What is the value, right? So you can actually show this in a very nice way. And again, product category, which of the product categories really grew and which didn't grow. Product similarity, right? So in fact, the very interesting analysis around, you know what, plain dosa has a positive correlation with a wider set of products, which means that if somebody consumes plain dosa, looks like they consume something or the other as part of their thing, right? Whereas if somebody is buying packaged water, or if they have consumed packaged water, typically they will buy only that water bottle and leave, right? They don't consume any of the other products, right? Interesting, right? To kind of look at this. And this is again some kind of a correlation metric showing what correlates with what the most, right? So correlation is nothing but relationship, right? If I do one of this, do I do the same of the other, right? Things like that. Or is it negatively correlated? I do more of one thing, I do less of the other thing, right? So that's basically what the correlation thing talks about. So again, this is all nice way of compressing information, showing it. And what can you do with it? You can plan the strategy for the next month. You know what is the consumption levels, you know the consumption levels by day, right, for the previous month, right, or probably the last 3 months. Now we'll start thinking about, okay, now how much should I make in the future or in the next or today, so that I can get maximum value. I reduce wastage, right, and I also ensure that I don't tell a customer I don't have that dish, right. Last one is transformation roadmap. Again, you can go to grammarly.com and look at all these things. There are many other sites also where it gives you those kinds of visualizations. This again, I just wanted to show because of the fantastic visualization that is there. So in this case, it's a slightly complicated piece of data. This is basically a supply chain where a company basically procures products from its suppliers, and each of the circles here represents a supplier. The size of the circle represents a volume purchased. So I can actually take it out like this, right? So looks like this is a big supplier because the size of the circle is big. The color indicates, for example, red color indicates the rate that the supplier charges is very high compared to the rest of the suppliers, right? So the red indicates, for example, this red means you're buying a lot from the supplier, and the money that you're paying in order to procure that is also very high, right? So probably you should move away from the supplier as soon as possible. You're just exposed too much and you're also paying a very high cost, right? And this nice chain indicates, right, okay, now this is one route, right, as such. So in that one route, you're basically having so many different suppliers. So you can actually identify which routes have largest number of suppliers, which routes you need to optimize, which routes you should not. I mean, if you don't have too many suppliers in that route, why waste the fuel cost, right? So you can take a lot of interesting decisions based on the data if you can visualize the data in the right manner. Okay. Okay, so let me move on. So hopefully that was fun. I always find that, in fact, I wanted to show this picture because if you really look at what Iron Man does, that's all visualization, right? He basically gets a lot of information. Of course, Iron Man is a little more futuristic, but the way that whole information is gathered, analyzed, and he comes to conclusion, he develops Jarvis, all that in some sense is analytics, right? Okay, so it is fun. And what should you do to work in analytics, right? Again, some of these things you will learn probably over a period of time, but what skills are required? Again, always remember that the magic is here, right? The rest are all details. You can learn everything at whatever point in time, but the real magic is taking the data that you have and creating information that you don't have. Of course, creating useful information, because with that information, you should be able to do something, right? Either from a business angle, or I spoke about the example of preventing diseases, right? Or you're improving education, right, in a particular place. So you can use it for many different purposes. You should know what the purpose is before you use analytics. There's no point in just developing all this mathematical techniques and models without really knowing the purpose. But the purpose in some sense is this: taking data and converting into information that you don't have, which could be useful to solve a variety of different problems. Okay, so in a business setting, you will have a lot of decision makers, right? A CEO of a company and people in the company taking decisions, right? The goal of analytics in some sense is to extract all that data and analyze all that data. So there is extraction of data, which is important because you need to acquire the data, because data is the raw material and it's sitting somewhere. So you need to be able to get to that data, and you need to be able to analyze it, because analysis basically gives you the insights. Like in all the previous examples I showed you, the way they would have analyzed all Dhoni sixers helped them to put together a visualization, which is so easy for us to consume and take decisions based on that, right? So to extract data, you need programming skills. What they call a structured query language called SQL is what we typically use in order to extract data, but more often than not, we use Python a lot in the industry. Python is a programming language, so you need to have some programming skills. Then analysis of data, we do a lot of Excel analysis. Excel is a great tool, Excel type of spreadsheets, right, by which you can actually put in the data, analyze all that. Probably that's one thing. I showed you a bunch of visualizations. That's a great way to analyze data. So you need to have an ability to analyze data, right? Then as it gets more and more complex, you get into more complex problems, you need to do statistical analysis. So your statistics is important. all the way up to machine learning and artificial intelligence and things like that, which are more sophisticated algorithms, right? Which help you to analyze all the data that you have to come up with those insights and predictions. And then the most important thing is you need to have the ability to communicate the results to people who are taking the decisions, and eventually you will become a decision maker yourself, and where you consume the data, you analyze it, or somebody analyzes it for you. You will have to look at it and say, okay, this is what I'm going to go for. Let's say you are a CEO of a company, you will want to set the price of a product, right, so that it sells more, or you want to invest millions of rupees and dollars to develop a new product, right? All those decisions you've got to take, and most cases you will basically have those decisions taken with the use of data, right? You extract data, you analyze data, come up with those insights and predictions, and if you can communicate it appropriately to the decision makers, then they can use it for their decision making. Okay. Now, one interesting aspect is this decision makers itself could become an AI eventually, right? For example, a self-driving car is basically even the decision making and the action is everything done by the car itself, right? The human can completely be take their hands off, right? Potentially, but for those things to come into mainstream, it's going to take a little bit more time. You will see, all of you will basically see how it pans out over a period of time. But the bottom line is insights predictions are fundamental. Then if you can also make a computer software do the decisions for you, okay, possibly that's even better, but we don't know. And it's a little too dangerous also because we don't know how these machines will work. Many of you would have seen these Terminator kind of movies, right? Once the machines run amok, uh, we don't know what it can do, right? But the most important thing, forget about statistical analysis, machine learning, all that you can learn at any point in time. The most important thing, which is what I would say, start with that right away, because again, I mean, kids of this generation are extremely smart. That's a conclusion I've reached, right? And you have ability to connect all the dots. You are able to integrate a lot of information. The most important thing is to have that problem solving attitude, right? And physics and chemistry and maths, everything provides you that opportunity in some sense. And analytics is as fundamental as your maths, physics, chemistry, and the fundamental areas which you learn during your schooling years, right? Because the world is moving towards a place where there's going to be lots and lots and lots of data, and you need to have the ability to work with data, understand them, right? Be friends with data. Don't be scared of it, right? That's very important. And all that you can put it to use only if you have a problem solving attitude, the ability for you to understand a problem, look at a problem, or formulate. Okay, you have a situation, what is the problem here, right? That's fun also to kind of formulate a problem. And if you can formulate the right problem the right way, then you can put analytics to use and solve all those problems, right? In summary, my last slide is there is a digital shift that's happening, right? Which means digital shift is nothing but everything kind of moving to a digital kind of a footprint, right? It's basically getting into devices and things like that. Transactions, all the banking transactions that you do, the Swiggy transactions that you do, Uber, Ola, right? All those are transactions, interactions, all the social chatter. You write the reviews, you post tweets, right? You do e-commerce reviews, for example, as you purchase a book. And there are also lots of sensors, right? The CCTV cameras is a kind of a sensor. And if you look at any manufacturing plant, they have a lot of sensors embedded in equipments to understand, right? Okay, what is the pressure of a particular boiler? What is the temperature? So there are lots and lots of sensors that are coming up. All that is leading to lots of data, right? And it is unlocking a lot of new problems. Of course, all this is from a business setting, but you can broad base it and say from a society standpoint also, there are lots of problems that are out there which can be solved. And for the first time in the history of humanity, we also seem to have the technology power, right? So not that people thought of all these problems right now, the problems existed, but there was no technology power or the open source revolution, the cloud infrastructure, right? Now that is happening. So both coming together is a great time for us to really look at the problems, harness the technology power, right? The mathematical techniques and the algorithms in order to solve those problems so that you can benefit the society as a whole. Right? And so my belief is, and since that is a very fundamental change, the digital shift that's happening, right? In fact, this this generation is basically the digital generation, right? You guys have have basically started off with gadgets and all the interesting aspects of working with these devices, right? And that's a digital shift. That's a very fundamental change, irreversible. So analytics will continue to accelerate in the future. And so this is a great time to kind of start thinking about what is analytics and why, read about it. And it's, as I said, so fundamental that you can treat it as just an addition to your maths, physics, chemistry, whatever you guys are doing, or commerce and accountancy. Working with data, handling data, making friends with data is a very, very important skill for the future, right? And so I'm very happy to kind of talk to all of you today. And thanks so much for inviting me for this talk. With that, I can take any questions that you might have.
It was our pleasure, sir. Sir, I actually have a question.
Sure.
Are there any specific colleges that we need to go to like excel in this field?
No, not necessarily, right? So that is the beauty of it. In fact, we spoke about the digital revolution, etc. There's just so much of resources available. I mean, if you really want to, you can listen to a MIT lecture by the most famous AI person, right? In the comfort of your home on your laptop, correct? So colleges are important because there's a lot of peer learning, right? There's a network that you can leverage and things like that. But resources are available in plenty, right? So there's no dearth of resources. I mean, 10 years back, if I have to run some kind of an algorithm, I need to get access to a commercial software, right? And who gives, I mean, unless you have it in your company, you really can't use it. Nowadays, everything is open source. It's all available. There are tons of tutorials. You think of a problem, somebody has already solved the problem to some extent, right? You can actually go learn from them, talk to them, and people are so open in terms of sharing the knowledge. That's really the revolution which is creating, which is very exciting for me, right? That the open source thing, if you really look at it, some of these big companies, they spend millions of dollars in order to develop algorithms and models. And what do? They open source it. They say, guys, please use it, right? Because I think you can use this to solve a variety of different problems. So answer to your question is, it's important to go to a good college so that you get that peer learning and there is a lot of focus that can come in, great professors who can teach you, etc. But in order to get an understanding, in order to develop your skill, develop your knowledge, there are just tons of resources that are there, right? The way I learn right now is there is Coursera, which I use in order to get the conceptual knowledge. There is Udemy that I go to in order to get hands-on knowledge, right? And of course, by talking to different people, you actually learn a lot of different things, right? So resources are not a limiting factor at all. In fact, the problem is that of too many resources. So you need to figure out how do you pick and choose, how do you move in a direction there where you're connecting the dots, right? So that's basically what I would say. And a good place, again, just because you ask for colleges, is one, you can go for a proper course in a college, absolutely important. But there are also, for example, IIT, NPTEL is one initiative by all the IITs and IISc put together. NPTEL is called SWAYAM now. They actually have all the lectures, they have courses that are given, and there are Introduction to Analytics is one of the courses that I did. It's a fantastic course, right? And now they have a kind of a BSc program, a certificate program, and it's very, very interesting because it will make you do exercises. You will actually get the foundation really, really right. So you can make use of that also. It's all online.
Sir, I've actually heard of a profession called actuarial science. It seems a lot similar to this. Can you like tell how it's different or how it's similar?
Okay, so actuarial science, yes, that's probably insurance, and actuaries were one of the first few people who started working with data, right, and analyzing data, because they have, I mean, the mortality tables and all were prepared, what, some 1700 kind of a time frame. And Scottish Widows, which was the first insurance fund, started around 1660 or so, right? So yes, actuarial science has been there for a fairly long period of time. The difference is, in some sense, actuarial science is more rule based, right? You will actually, somebody has to understand what is happening and then write a bunch of rules or think about, okay, if this is the situation, then probably this is what I'm going to price my product as, and things like that. There's a lot of rule based analysis that you do, right? Analytics is broader in the sense that you can do it with rules if you know what the rules are. right? But if you even don't know the rules under which certain things operate, you can have data auto discover the rules, right? So machine learning, for example, is a discipline that has grown in stature because what machine learning says is, okay, I don't want rules. Don't tell me how to do things, right? Give me enough historical examples. I will figure out the rules, right? So that kind of a thing is also coming into actuarial science in some way, machine learning and things like that. But actuarial science for a very long period of time is all about a certain set of rules formulated, and you're basically acting based on those rules, right? And of course, you become an actuary because you know the rules very precisely, and you have studied that science in a very strong manner, right? With a lot of expertise. Similar example is that of a manufacturing plant, right? So manufacturing plant actually has a lot of control systems. These are all if-then rules that are put in. Oh, if the temperature exceeds so much, then shut off this valve, right? Similarly, there are lots of these rules that are put in. The latest development in that space is saying, okay, don't formulate because rules are tricky, right? Because rules, if they can break, right? Some new situation could arise because of which the rules does not work out, right? Or that rule does not even exist, because there's a new situation out there. Whereas machine learning, because it auto discovers the rules, is capable of handling even such scenarios. So nowadays, what we do instead of writing rules, we basically say, okay, give a bunch of historical data where some machine has failed and not failed. You know what the parameters for that failure is. You give it to an algorithm, and the algorithm will do all those things and develop a model, right? And when new data comes in, the model will say, okay, is there a probability of failure, right, in the next 1 hour, 2 hours, 6 hours, based on that model, right? So there's a very interesting interplay of things based on rules and things that can be rules which are getting auto discovered, right? And one last example is, think of how you identify an object, right? Can you write rules for it? You can't, right? You look at an object and identify an object. If I ask you to say, okay, tell me precisely how you have identified an elephant in that picture, you can't write rules, right? You can't say, oh, I saw that curve in the ear and I thought, no, it's impossible to write a bunch of rules to detect a cat or a dog and an elephant or any image for that matter. What can machine learning do? You give hundreds and thousands of examples of elephants, different types of elephants standing in different positions, different lighting, etc., etc. The algorithm will actually detect all the features, and you give a new picture, it will actually tell you whether it's an elephant or not. Right? So there are a lot of scenarios where rule-based thing is simply not possible, right? Simply because of there's too much data, or there is no way you can codify the rules, like this elephant example. In such cases, you need to use analytics, machine learning, AI, and things like that. But having the common point is you're having data, right? Information that you have, and you're converting into information that you probably don't have, right? That's the bottom line. I mean, I went from insurance and actuarial science all the way up to elephants, but yeah, hopefully that was clear.
Thank you, sir. I could understand it.
Got it. Cool.
Are there any other questions?
Yeah, so is computer science, like learning computer science, engineering, or to do a degree in computer science important to do analytics?
Not necessarily, right? So if you really look at computer science, right, computer science is all about, in some sense, understanding the fundamentals of how computers, networking, and things like that, right? Of course, there is a good aspect of applications also. So which is good. So learning computer science would help, but an analytics professional can be a commerce graduate, right, who's only focused on, okay, what problems do exist, and then how can I solve the problems with data? And you're basically an analytics professional, right? In order to do analytics, you don't really need to necessarily learn computer science, because it's an application of computer science, and so anybody can learn the programming aspects of it. There is absolutely no, and in fact, what is happening a lot right now is people can just drag and drop, right, and the programs get auto-generated on its own, what are called as no-code software or low-code software, and that will continue to evolve, right? This is not to say programming is not interesting, or don't do programming. Programming is very, very interesting, and you need to know it in order to figure out what happens behind the scenes. But using AI applications is different from creating analytical applications or AI applications. You can still use it even without creating it, right? So answer to your question is it's open for everybody with a problem solving attitude.
Okay. So when you said problem solving attitude, so how do children start developing that? So how do they actually start developing that attitude or aptitude for problem solving?
Okay, that's a great question. Easy as well as a difficult question. Easy because I think children by their very nature or in your formative years, you're always thinking about problems, right? You're always trying to figure out what is the best way to kind of, okay, this, I don't understand something. What do I do? Experiment and do something to understand some of that stuff. So that needs to be honed, right? But having said that, there are some real techniques that you have to follow. For example, I would strongly encourage schools to teach some of these things, what is called a structured thinking, right? Structured thinking is an area where you take a complex problem, you can actually break it down into parts. And there are techniques to do that, right? There are techniques like issue trees and things like that, which now what happens is it's not taught really at a school level, not even at a college level. And people start figuring it out once they get into the industry, because there's a huge problem. And then how do you really break it and create a hypothesis? And hypothesis is at a very basic level. It's a very simple thing. It's basically saying, what is the cause? What is the cause that something happens? What is the effect of that, right? And because of that effect, what is the consequence? Cause, effect, and consequence is basically the way you formulate a hypothesis, right? But since people are not taught about how to formulate a hypothesis, it becomes very difficult for people as they grow in terms of thinking about a structured way of solving problems. Right. So what I would say is encourage that creativity in kids, in people at the school level, which I think you're already doing, looking at what I've seen in the video. I think that's great. But at the same time, look at some techniques by which you can develop the structured thinking habit. Structured thinking also helps you to connect the dots. I think the most important skill, I think I mentioned this earlier also, right? The most important skill in the future is about how do you look at different things and connect the dots between things, right? Right? I understand this. I don't understand this. Okay, is there a connection? Can I connect it using data, using analytics, using whatever ways of looking at that problem? Right. So that is something which I would say is a good way to learn that structured thinking and hypothesis generation, which is going to be very, very useful for analytics itself.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, children?
Any more questions?
You can post your questions or ask.
When Sir was talking about that analyzing the bar graph, I totally couldn't understand anything at that time.
Which one, Divisha?
Like when you were explaining about the analytics, like how you analyze things and all.
Correct.
Yeah, I couldn't understand the point. I couldn't understand that alone.
You understood the Dhoni one?
Yeah, I understood the Dhoni one, that root map alone.
The route map, is it? Yeah, route map is difficult to understand. I agree. I only showed it because it looks cool, right? With all those graphs and this thing. But don't worry about it. That's okay. That's just an example of how you can visualize things using graphs. Right? It's a graphical kind of a view, right? Something connected to the other, right? So the connection basically means these two things are related to one another.
Okay, sir.
Right? And the size indicates something, the color indicates something. But the details of it, don't worry. I don't think that's very relevant.
Because it was confusing me totally.
Correct. Sometimes, oh, that's a good example because sometimes analytics can get very confusing also. I think it is very easy to understand, but for you, right, you might find it very confusing. And it happens all the time for me when I explain something to the clients. They say, I don't understand this. What are you talking here? Right. So it's very important to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Right. In fact, when I was trying to get this PPT in place, I didn't know how to start. Right? I mean, in my mind, I was thinking, okay, I can talk about algorithms and things like that, but that's not something which you people want to understand from me right now. All that you will learn later, right? But I thought, okay, somebody like a Messi, somebody like a Rajinikanth, you guys can probably relate to, and that's how I started that slide itself, right? What you know and what you don't know, correct? So analytics, it's very important to put yourself in the other person's shoes from the other side and say, what will they be thinking? They're seeing so much data. They are seeing some graph. What will they think about it? And then try and explain it in that fashion. Good that you pointed it out, because that's a very, very important competency, right, for an analytics person. And that is true, I think, all fields, I guess, right? Trying to look at everything from the other side is an important skill anyway, and for analytics more so.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jivisha.
Any more questions?
I think they are still processing, the entire subject of analytics. So,
okay, I think there's a
so
question
how
here.
important, that's the question there. Pranay, would you want to read it?
Yes, sir. Sir, this is from Lena Queen. How important can business analytics be when you're starting out from a small scale business?
Yeah, interesting question. Very, very useful, right? Because for a small scale business, again, the good news is I think everybody now can collect data, right? Whether it's a small scale business or a large scale business, you have the ability to collect data with some small application and an Excel sheet, right? So that once you have the data, then you can start thinking about what can I do with the data. For example, I used to go to a gym. Nowadays I don't, but then I used to go to a gym here. They used to collect all the data in terms of people who come to the gym, right? Who has the 3-month subscriptions, 1-year subscriptions. It's a very small kind of a place. But I could basically look at that Excel sheet and tell them a lot about, okay, you know what, there are people who have taken that 1-year subscription, they're not even coming, right? You should probably call them in order to entice them to come so that they will extend their subscription, right? And looks like there are certain periods in the day, right, where there is a lot more this thing, right? A lot more people coming into the gym, which is natural. But once you look at the data, you understand it very precisely, right? Then you basically offer incentives to people to come at different points in time so that you don't crowd the gym itself, right? Very simple application, but very, very powerful for them in order to improve their business, right? So there can be tons of these examples, small scale level. Once you have the data, once you know what problems you have to solve, and obviously small scale business will have problems in terms of cash flow, revenue, cost, right? You can use all that data to understand what is happening in order to run your business better, right? So the best way to start off is take the data and start analyzing it at some level, just working with it, put some formula, create something, right, with a view to understand something with that data. Automatically, you can start getting those insights. Yeah, so very, very relevant for small scale companies.
Sir, I have another question. How exactly is the proficiency of the certain analytics measured, sir? Because they all start from the same data. How is it measured? Like, how accurately will it be measured, sir?
Okay. That's a very, very good question. It's a profound question, right? Because you need to understand things at a certain level in order to look at the verification validation part. We call it as verification validation, or how do you assure the quality of analytics applications, right? That's really the question that you're asking, right? So
Yes, sir.
one way to do it, and again, it's both it's an art and a science in some sense, right? It's not a perfect science. But one aspect of it is first you start with the status quo, which is basically means where are you right now, right? So, for example, the forecasting of snacks example that I spoke about, right, in that movie thing. Okay, so you are basically saying I'm forecasting the demand using some rules, and that is only 60% accurate. Okay, now by using analytics, if you can get that accuracy to 70%, then you have improved, right? So that's one way to look at the quality of the analytics application, where after you deploy the application, is there an improvement in some of the metrics? Okay, and then you say, yes, this is making sense to me, I'm improving this, and so it makes sense for me as a business. So that's one way to evaluate it. But what if you want to evaluate at the time of developing the model itself, not after deploying it or something like that, but while developing the model or developing the algorithm itself, there are a lot of metrics that come from a statistics standpoint. To kind of say, what you typically do is you take, let's say you have 100 data points, okay, for which you know the answers already because it's all historical data, right, Pranay? You get that, right? Now,
Yes,
to
sir.
develop that application, I will use only 80 data points. Okay, I develop that model or the application. Okay, then I will use that application or the model on the other 20 data points which was not used earlier. Okay, and see the performance on the 20. Right? If the performance on the 20 is also good, then the assumption is that your model is good enough for you to actually deploy it in the real world. Okay? Because, sorry, there's a lot of background noise. Sorry.
Sorry. Can you please mute yourself? I think there is somebody who has switched on the speaker. Can you please switch off?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. So that is why one is seeing the improvement after you deploy the application. That's kind of straightforward. The other one is to, while developing the application itself, use what is called as a cross-validation technique, the technique that I told you just now, right? Where you keep aside some data points. You don't see it when you're developing the application or the model. And then after you develop the model with those 80 data points, you bring in the 20 for which you already know the answers and see what the model tells you, right? If the model and the actual thing actually is the same, then you're saying, yes, the model is of good quality and I can actually deploy it in the real world. Right? So that's
Yes,
how
sir.
and that's a very, very important area because nowadays it's become very easy to develop these kinds of applications and models, but testing them and assuring the quality and how do you continuously monitor it on the real world, those are things which are becoming more and more important in the industry right now.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, very interesting question. Thanks.
Any more questions? I think everyone's clear now, sir, on the entire topic. Can I request everyone to turn on the video for a photo? Did you take it, ma'am?
Just clicking. I think they are switching it on. Just give me
Okay.
a few seconds. Yeah, thank you, Pranay. Yes, I have.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Sir, now I'd like to request Adya to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Pranay. So, success doesn't happen by chance, but by choice. I'm Adya from class 11, and I would like to thank everybody present here today. It is completely up to us to decide and choose how we want to lead our lives. But when we don't have a clear view of the available options, we need guiding lights to pave the way for us. Today, I would like to thank you, sir, our Honorable Chief Guest, Mr. Karthikeyan Shankaran, who has given us an insight and has shown us the various options and possibilities we have in the field of data and business analytics. On this note, I would like to thank our Chancellor, sir, Dr. N.M. Veerayan, our respected directors, Dr. Savita and Dr. Rajesh, and our beloved teachers, parents, and all the students present here today. Once again, I would like to thank our directors for this amazing opportunity and also initiating various programs, including this Career Talk series for the students during the pandemic. Thank you to everybody assembled here today. Have a great day ahead.
Cool. Thank you very much. Pleasure talking to all of you. Have a nice weekend and stay safe.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir, for being here with us today.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine. Thank you.
Thank you, children. You can switch on your video. Thanks, sir, and you can leave.
Sure. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.
Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Bye. See you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Bye, sir.